Here we see information about the Spanish volunteer 250th Infantry Division, or more commonly known the Blaue Division, that was active on the northern sector of the Eastern Front around Leningrad. This talks about the different climates between what the soldiers are used to back in Spain and the freezing conditions that they are confronted with in Russia. It states that they are handling it well and happy to be given the opportunity to defend European culture against the Bolsheviks. Many of the soldiers in the Blaue Division fought the Soviets during the Spanish Civil War and considered going to Russia a kind of payback for what they had done in Spain. The division was led by General Muñoz Grande, who can be seen here. Here is some Deutsche Wochenschau footage of the division. The troops were trained in Germany, but their basic training was cut short from the typical 3 months to only 5 weeks in order to rush them to the front in Russia. Rushed is not really an accurate term, because much of the 1,000 kilometers distance covered was actually done marching. Here is some beautiful film footage of the Blaue Division taken by Wochenschau camera crews that also was never shown to the public. It shows the unit defending against a Russian attack. The snow drifts are so high that digging tunnels was sometimes necessary to get from one defensive position to another. In addition to showing the soldiers' willingness to sacrifice, it also shows the level to which they were suffering, which was something the regime wanted to keep from the public. This unused official film footage was some of the most historically important because it shows content that the regime actively repressed. The soldiers of the Blaue Division wore German uniforms with a shoulder patch with the Spanish national red and gold colors. At first, the Germans were unsure of what combat effectiveness they could expect from this unit, but after fighting and dying, they eventually won the respect of their comrades in arms. This text talks about the ingenuity of the soldiers fighting in winter conditions, showing how a small boat is being used to carry the heavy equipment of the soldiers. The experience of the Finnish soldiers who had fought against the Russians during the so-called Winter War of 1939 was of great importance. When needed, that same boat could be used for carrying wounded soldiers. The use of dogs was especially widespread in Army Group North. Their two most important roles was protecting ammunition dumps and carrying important messages from frontline soldiers. Here, a Finnish soldier is writing his observations of Soviet movements that will be put in a canister and brought to the nearest Finnish command post center, much as a carrier pigeon would be used. Below is a photo of a motorcycle messenger that in comparison was often less capable and slower than the dog messenger. The Germans learned in the first winter that often the more primitive methods were more effective. The ability of horses to remain active under the worst of conditions was understood, and the use of offensive cavalry units was reintroduced. Let's take a look at some K9 training footage. This Finnish film has a length of 12 minutes and 34 seconds and is called Dogs in the Service of the Finnish Military. Many of the skills needed for frontline operation went against their natural tendencies, including staying calm under fire, not barking or chasing animals, and leaving and going to a predetermined location independently. Here we can see the dogs completing their training, being shipped off to the front line, and finally with their units in action. transport injured soldiers. On these pages we switch to the Army Group South in and around the Crimean Peninsula. In this photo at the top, we see a former Soviet airfield that is now being used by German Me-109 fighters supporting the local troops. We can see a destroyed Russian plane, and below we can even see the red Soviet star hanging on a hangar. Here we see a reconnaissance plane taking off. The thermometer shows that the temperature is minus 31 degrees Celsius and talks about how the Romanian and German coastal batteries are defending the coastline. This text talks about how the terrible cold freezes the metal bases of the guns and that it takes a few minutes to get them moving again. Eventually they are worked free. This photograph at the bottom shows the passageway from a gun to where the ammunition is stored. This is private footage of Army Group South from 1942. Its length is 18 minutes and it shows a gun battery along the coastline defending against a possible Soviet landing. The gun crew is busy working on the battery with a soldier who is kneeling, gluing preset firing coordinates along the gun's rotational arc. We are shown a close-up of how the actual gun is secured to the swiveling mechanism and then shown how a mechanical crank rotates the gun. Again, notice the preset coordinates. The crew then adjusts for distance, a shell is brought, and the gun is fired. We get a good look at how the camouflage netting is set up. This is wonderful footage because it shows how such a gun emplacement was set up and worked in reasonable detail. This final page of the third magazine of 1942 shows at the top a beautiful color photograph of an 88 anti-tank gun and its crew. Below it shows minesweepers in the Baltic Sea. So next week we'll be doing number 4 for the year 1942. Thank you very much for watching this. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do that. And we'd also appreciate if you would forward this on to someone else who might be interested. Thank you very much.